Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back with another video, and we're going to take a look at another one of those Batman trades that not too many people talk about. But before we kind of delve into the book we're going to talk about, the trade anyway, first want to mention Batman 38, and this is not going to be a review for Batman 38. Only reason I kind of mention this is because as I was reading this, when I was home for Pittsburgh, it kind of reminded me of the book we're going to talk about here. But it kind of goes back to a theme that you see from time to time with Batman, in that you take the origin of Bruce Wayne and what happened to him that made him kind of get the catalyst to make him become Batman. What DC does a lot, not really a lot, but it does from time to time, it kind of takes that certain circumstance or that event that Bruce had to go through, and it takes it through the lens of another character, and you kind of see a contrast of how kind of the path that the individual goes through might vary from where Bruce Wayne or Batman is often led up, where Batman or Bruce took that fateful night in Crime Alley, which serves as the catalyst to become Batman, to take that tragic event and serve it as a way to do good, whether it be vigilantism or whatever, as a billionaire in Gotham. Whereas you see some characters where it kind of takes a different path. You kind of seen it, and recently in Tom King's run, we had Gotham and Gotham Girl, specifically Gotham, the tragedy he had to go through, which kind of molded his way of thinking and the path he chose to be a superhero. I kind of seen a little bit in Hush, whereas, well, Hush, obviously, the death of his parents was definitely no accident by a criminal. Obviously, Tommy Elliott kind of took it and did a different way with it. But again, you kind of see it in this story, just like others, where the tragedy at a young age kind of molds an individual into what they're going to be. And this leads us into this story that really reminded me of the book we're going to talk about, and that is Batman Wrath. And Wrath is a character, he's a very interesting character in that, whereas again, Batman kind of does his thing with, not want to say by with and through the Gotham City Police Department, but quasi as an ally, and definitely someone that Batman also wants to help in one way or fashion. Whereas Wrath, again, takes the tragedy that he went through as a child and rather, kind of turn it for good and maybe being an ally with the police. The Wrath's origin takes into the fact that he is very anti-police. And his stories have differed, for lack of a better term. We've seen it most recently in Batman Detective Comics. This is issue number 957. While the Wrath might not have been really a focal point of this issue, this is more a Stephanie Brown spoiler issue with kind of the Wrath in the background. But this really wasn't a good issue at all. This was kind of bad to even bring this up, but it kind of brought Wrath into a different, unique view from what we saw in Batman the Wrath. But before that, we actually had in Detective Comics, this is just the trade. This was done by John Layman and Jason Fabok. I forget the issues. This was in the single issues, but whereas the Wrath was more very anti-police, this one kind of take the approach of Wrath. I'm not going to say he was pro-police, but he kind of used his approach to get to Batman, kind of infiltrating the police from within. So it was a unique kind of take on the character, but I would say both of those were kind of far contrast to what we've seen in this trade entitled Batman the Wrath. This trade here covers, I think, 5 issues. First one, it's kind of a 2-part story, all centered around the Wrath character. The first story is from the pages of Batman Special Number 1, which are at least sometime in the early 80s. And the bulk of this story, I think 4 issues, Comes from Batman Confidential. This is issues 13 to 16. And this trade, again, it's a relatively short trade. After reading Batman 38, again, kind of served a catalyst to kind of take a look at this again and go with it. But, again, 2 stories, whereas that Batman Special #1 kind of served as sort of the origin for the Wrath character. And Wrath, what happened, whereas Batman's parents were gunned down by a criminal, as we find out, not really, the first issue doesn't kind of really flush it out as much, the first part of the story, but it does lay the foundation that the Wrath character, his parents were murdered in the same day, same time, almost the same exact place as Thomas and Martha, but in totally different circumstances. Whereas, again, Thomas and Martha were killed by a criminal, the Wrath's parents were actually killed by Commissioner Gordon while they were actually robbing I think it was an appliance store or whatever, trying to get some like TVs and VCRs and whatnot. And obviously the Wrath was there as a young child. He was actually serving as kind of a lookout while his parents were looting the store. But again, the fact that his parents were killed by a cop right in front of him kind of served as a catalyst for him to basically don this character, be much like Batman, but again, take it to the angle where Batman takes that tragic event to serve as catalyst to do good and make Gotham better, where the Wrath took that event to become this person's very lethal, quite like Batman, got a whole lot of training, and find a way to take revenge for his parents' death. And the first issue, first part of the story, it's pretty quick. Kind of has kind of like the old 80s style art to it. It's written by Mike Barr, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it kind of leaves it at that. I'm not going to really spoil what happens to the very end of the issue, because it kind of goes into the very ending of the story, which I kind of want to leave some meat in the bone, because it's an interesting plot twist, as you see, again, from the first issue, from that Batman Special #1, and then the rest of the story picks up from the pages of Batman Confidential, which kind of serves as a sequel, quite down the road, actually, too. And the second issue picks up, the second part of the story, picks up, again, after the events of Batman Special #1, where the character Wrath returns to continue to strive for the revenge on Commissioner Gordon. We actually find out in the second half of the story is he's the person that actually murdered his parents, and in doing so also wants to take out Batman, because Batman is the key, he thinks, to flushing out Commissioner Gordon. Or actually, he's only, I think, Detective Gordon. I don't think he's Commissioner yet. And that's the best way to get to him. And you see a lot of interesting people in this story. You see Nightwing actually show up, and he's kind of like the classic Nightwing actually reference. He's still part of the Teen Titans in this story. Let's see if we can get a good picture. Yeah. And the interaction between Batman and Nightwing, it's kind of interesting in that there's that point in time when Dick left to go become the member of the Teen Titans, where his relationship with Bruce really wasn't very good. And you see that in a story where their relationship is kind of rocky, and Alfred's kind of like serving as the middleman. But they do work together to take out this character entitled called the Wrath, and that he's in the second part of the story. The Wrath is again he's killing all these police officers. And actually, these police officers are actually coming in from a convention in Gotham City, and that they're police officers from around the world, and they're actually kind of famous police officers. And the Wrath, in a way to kind of again flush out Gordon, is taking out several members of these high-profile police officers. And in doing so, you do see kind of some interesting. You see there actually the way Batman kind of flushes out the wrath, because he can't. The thing that we see in here, which I found kind of interesting, is that you've seen him in Scott Snyder's run in Black Mirror. They use this kind of, I don't want to say device, but we'll just say a theme, that there are certain people that are kind of like the exact opposites of himself, a dark reflection. And you see that theme kind of mentioned in the story, and that Batman actually is making the point that this Wrath character is a direct reflection of himself, maybe a darker version of himself, and that they're very similar in terms of fighting styles, intelligence, detective abilities, whatnot. And they're always, in these battles they have within each other, are very evenly matched. And the fights between each other are actually well choreographed in here. But you see a lot of twist in this story, in that you find out that the Wrath character is not exactly who it appears to be when referencing the events that occurred in Batman Special Number 1. And this person, I don't want to say brainwashed, but sort of is. But again, he's really going after getting revenge on Gordon. And in doing so, there was actually a love interest that the Wrath had in the Batman Special Number 1 that kind of carries over into this issue. And that individual was actually the daughter of a major crime boss in Gotham, where the way the crime families wanted to take out the Gotham police was actually get rid of some of the police officers. And that's kind of how the introduction of the character actually happened, whereas the Wrath was, again, trying to find a way to get back at Gordon. But this crime family, this head of this crime family's daughter, actually hired the Wrath to take out the police. And in doing so basically the Wrath found his way to get his funding and resources to get his revenge on Gordon through this individual who actually turned out to have become a love interest. But then that kind of carries over into this story, and I think it's an interesting plot twist that it kind of does flush out about halfway through the second part of the story, which, to be honest, if you saw the cliffhanger, and once you see the cliffhanger in the first part of the story, it does you do kind of see things aren't all that they seem. And to not really spoil all the details in this, there is a epic clash as the Wrath does try to take, he does have Commissioner Gordon, or Detective Gordon at the time, cornered in his house, and he thinks he's got Gordon. He thought he found a way to take out Nightwing, and then he's also going to culminate by taking out the Batman. But again, all is not that is seen. That is seen. You see some forward planning with Gordon, as well as Bruce Wayne, to thwart the efforts of the Wrath. All in all, I mean, this was a good story, to be honest. As after rereading it, I do kind of appreciate kind of the dichotomy again, where you see how different people kind of take tragedy and use it for motivation for different reasons. And this story was really no different. So kind of going into some of the specifics on this. The first part of the story, again, that Batman special, it's actually a good read. There's only a couple things I kind of really didn't all that, I'm not going to say appreciate, but it did seem kind of odd, where in that the Wrath does find a way to flush out the identity of Batman. And how he does so was kind of cheap, in that Leslie Tompkins is actually in here, and Leslie Tompkins again kind of used as a way to kind of get back at Gordon and Batman. But what she says, that she mentions the date of, every year Batman goes to meet Leslie Tompkins at this place in Crime Alley, mentions July 26th, blah 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 blah, and that's how the Wrath kind of puts two and two together, that that's the night of the Wayne murder. And no, that's how Batman is Bruce Wayne. And in doing so, that's how he actually takes out Alfred for a little bit. And that's how we get Nightwing into the story in the second half of the story. And to be honest, it really wasn't fleshed out all that much, and it did feel kind of cheap. The second half of the story, the writing is good. Again, you can kind of get the plot twist about halfway through, and especially when you see the end of how the Batman special #1 kind of wraps up, which I'll just see if I can kind of throw the picture out. I don't want to say it, but because I did want to leave some meat on the bones here. But it does. You kind of figure out, like, yeah, things aren't all that it seems. Another thing, the writing, I thought the dialogue was good. It's a very good, well-paced issue. And you do see a lot of detective work and Batman, using his tools and his resources to find and locate the Wrath and try to get ahead of him. But the way that, again, Batman's able to do so does feel kind of lazy a little bit. And how Commissioner Gordon escapes the big climactic events that occurred pretty much at the crescendo of the battle toward the end of the issue. It was kind of did feel like the writer, it wasn't Barr, I forget who wrote the issues in Batman Confidential, did kind of take an easy way out just a little bit. But as far as the story and the plot and the pacing, it is all really well done. It's a very fun read in that, and I like how the letter actually does a good job. And when you get the dialogue, there's a lot of inner dialogue when the Wrath and Batman are fighting each other, and you see kind of like the blue letters and the blue letterbox and whatnot. You do get a lot of good inner dialogue with the Wrath, and even the Batman as well. The art, the first part, again, you kind of take that first part of the story and Batman Special #1, kind of take it for what it is, simply because it is definitely an 80s style art. And I'm kind of curious, does it even say when these issues in Batman Confidential was released? In 2008, yeah. You can definitely tell a sharp contrast in the art style. I think the art, when I was looking at this again, it really did harken to kind of like the style you see in like Fernando Pessoa, in that the way he kind of has his style, and his, especially in the heads and the faces, does have a unique style to his facial designs, and you see a lot in that. But I think the art, the pencils in this is very well done, and it's done by Michael Golden, I believe. No, I'm sorry, that might be the first one, Michael Golden. I think Rags Morales, that's right. He did the art in the second one. Mick Gray actually did the inks. Mick Gray we've seen in Batman and Robin, as well as Superman. Did the inks in the second part of the story. I thought it was really well done. I think really the art was really good. And I love you had a flashback scene. You get like the different tone of color. This kind of really goes into depth of what happened to the night where the Wrath's parents were murdered by Detective Gordon, we'll call it that. So it all has a very good art style, a lot of interesting, again, the way the dialogue, word balloons are done. Inks are great, colors are really good, so it is really a good, fun read. Some interesting two-page splashes in these. Panel layouts are somewhat traditional, but take it for what it is. All in all, this was it was a good story. This is one of those out-of-print ones, but this is an out-of-print story that I don't think will cost you an arm and a leg. I think this one, $18 was the cover price on it. I kind of, whoops, man, my camera sucks. Kind of just looking at prices for doing this video. It looks like it's relatively easy to get your hands on it. It's like $20 I see on eBay or whatnot. So this is one that's not impossible to get your hands on and won't break your bank. However, kind of looking as far as priority as to whether or not you should get it, I definitely get it, but this is one where get it if really there's nothing else you kind of really want at the time. There's none like more pressing Batman books to get. Because I kind of just take this as a kind of like a target of opportunity, and if you see something, you got some money, and there's really nothing else out there. You really want the time, sure. You want something to read, yeah, definitely grab it. It's a good read. Again, it's really brisk. It's like 4 issues or 4 or 5 issues. It reads quick, and it is a fun reading. Again, you kind of get in that theme of how different people kind of take tragic events and how it leads them down certain paths. Some people take it and use it for good, and some people use it for bad. As far as the Wrath character, this would be the quintessential read to do. Definitely, this part of Detective Comics was just, again, he was kind of like in the periphery. And this one, while this was a good story, if we're kind of looking at the origin of the character, might not have been as maybe true to what the Wrath is. So, if I had to rate this 1 out of 5, I would give Batman the Wrath. Let's see. I kind of give this one I'll give it a 3 out of 5. Above average, not fantastic, but definitely good, and especially if these other 2 stories kind of really want to get to the bottom of the Wrath character and what really makes the Wrath character kind of tick, and what's the Wrath character all about. This would be the one for you. So, anyway, hit me up in the comments below if you read the story and what you thought about it, and what you thought of this video, and then we'll bat chat about it and kind of go from there. Kind of eyeing up another Bat classic to read. I got a couple in mind which I want to do next, but we'll kind of see where that kind of goes, and we'll kind of go from there. So, until next time, take care.